Okay, so today we are doing a list of Terminator games. Um, I'm not the hugest fan of the films, though I do like two and two mostly. Three I thought was decent, but I think that movie got more hate than it deserved because it had the impossible task of following up the two. The original was like good and culturally important, but like the whole romance between the the freaking commander's mom and his subordinate was so incredibly forced, and the sex scene was just followed. It was just cringe, and it made it impossible to take the movie seriously after that point. But like, it is one of those movies that's important to watch once at least, and it did leave an impact with the future scenes. Probably a bit more than two actually, because they're spread out. And funnily enough, those future scenes have spawned probably more games than the rest of the movies have, for better or worse. But anyways, let's talk about the games, because we are not going to talk about the other three movies, especially Dark Fate. That's probably one of the worst and most wokest movies I've ever seen in my life. So, movies based off the first film. I didn't know this, but apparently the very first one was actually a PC game, or rather a DOS game, and it was kind of ahead of its time a little bit, because it allows you to play as both the role as Reese and the Terminator. And I would have tried this one, but from what I could tell, it's a bitch to run, and it just seems like one of those games that was like, very very early 90s, I'm talking like 1990 on the dot, or like late 80s types of games where it's not really accessible to anyone that isn't like a freaking super nerd. So I didn't bother with that one. It didn't look fun anyway. Like, it is an interesting concept, but just not enough to really want to wade through that. I don't know. Maybe anybody who's actually played it can say something on that. Now, the console games were a different breed. These were mostly 2D platformers of varying quality. The 8-bit one, which I'm going to base off the NES one, because I believe the Master System version was pretty similar, but it was pretty much kind of a straightforward Contra clone, but like without any of the good things about Contra. The level design was pretty bad. Hell, one of the first levels is in the freaking sewer, so that's a great way to start a game. And the difficulty is about what you would expect from like one of those licensed games, early licensed games. Kind of like the LGN level shit that AVGN loves so much. But I didn't spend much time with this one. I played it once. I never want to touch it again. It's just not fun. I'm going to say it's a low D. And believe it or not, that's actually not the worst version. The SNES version is a whole level of shit. Because the difficulty spike, well, not even a spike, it's just like, it just starts, peak, and stays there, is ridiculous. The combat is so incredibly clunky. The health system is just not fair. And to top it off, about halfway through the police station level, unlike the other versions of this game, you don't get a weapon. So you basically have to run from the cops or from the damn Terminator, and you get shot down real easily. So that's an exercise in futility. The only reason I got through that is because of freaking emulation cheating. I'm not even going to say, I don't even have a problem admitting it, this game's terrible. The Genesis version is better than either of the Nintendo versions, but that one's got a problem of being ridiculously short. There's only like 4 levels, unless I missed something. So it's incredibly short. It's difficult, but it's doable. I did manage to finish this one without too much trouble. Um, really, the really the one thing holding this damn thing back is this incredibly short length, and the fact that it has to be difficult to justify that. But it doesn't even do that well because again, it's doable. Um, I'm gonna also say this one's D, but it's definitely better than the the NES one. And the first level that takes place in the future is actually kind of fun. It's just the rest of the game. It's just what little there is. It's just kind of pretty blah. Now, okay, we've got 4 bad games. Well, 3 bad games and 1 game I didn't care to test myself based off the first film. So now we get to a unique Sega CD version, and unlike some of the other Sega CD games, this was not just a port with better graphics and music. This was an entirely different game. This is what the Genesis version should have been. It's still on the short side. It's only about an hour long, but the difficulty is a bit more fair. The platforming and shooting is probably the best of it's been for the first movie. There are games based on the first movie. And it has a pretty banging soundtrack, not gonna lie. It's a shame this game is locked down on the Sega CD because, like, this is the definitive version of any game that's based solely on the first film. I'm gonna say that's an A tier. It's actually a lot of fun. Really, again, just the real biggest problem with it is the fact that it's short. Like, if it had more levels, I'd say that, hey, this is like one of the best games in the series. Well, maybe not one of the best, but definitely one of the better. Terminator 2. This is split between 2 different games. The arcade game and then the console games, which, as far as I could tell, are pretty much the same on-off cross-all versions, just different levels of shit. Since I've already started on that one, the combat of the console version is pretty bad. And the vehicle sections are even worse, with very janky-ass controls. And to top it all off, you usually have to hunt around these labyrinthian levels to find a bunch of shit, even after you've done what the level would expect from, like, the movie's objective. Like, the bar fight in the beginning is, like, okay-ish, but, like, it just goes downhill from there. Like, I stopped playing this around maybe the 1/3 of the way point when I was having to go through the shopping mall. At least I think that was about the 1/3 point. I don't know, but I had to go through the shopping mall, and there's the layout. It's basically a door teleportation maze, and the layout is nonsensical, and you have to find a bunch of shit with a time limit. And at that point, it was just like, no, I'm done. This is a bad game. Don't play it. There's better games based off of the second film, which the first of which is said arcade game I started talking about. I don't know much about the console ports. I'm mostly basing this off of the actual arcade game, which I only got to play a few times, but the few times I did, I had a lot of fun since it's a light gun game. And unlike a lot of light gun games where it's just a pistol, you get a nice chunky machine gun to use. And I don't know, like, there's not a whole lot of bad to say about it. It looked good for its time. Had a pretty good sound design for an early arcade game, and again, using said gun was pretty chunky. It felt nice because it was nice and chunky, even if it was attached to the console. Probably the biggest problem I had with this game and what keeps it out of S tier is there's a couple levels that are escort missions. If you fail these and what you're supposed to protect dies, not only do you have to, insert another credit to start over, but you have to start the entire stage over. Yeah, which means in the arcade I never got past, like, the 3rd level. I had to, like, play the console ports. One of the console ports, I don't remember which, to, like, see the rest of the game. And the rest is too bad, because the rest of the game is a lot of fun. It's an A tier as well. Again, I would put it in an S if it wasn't for those escort missions. Now I move on to the more original stuff. 2039, or 2029, I forget. I'm tired right now, leave me alone. This was a dungeon crawler. Which, we think, wait a minute, Terminator dungeon crawler didn't make any sense. Well, their idea they had was make you essentially play in a suit of powered armor. So, you're not on foot. You're basically going through the wastelands in this power armor, which can be configured to have multiple weapons. And then you go in large buildings as well from time to time. The problem with this game is enemies will spawn infinitely, and not at a delay like you would expect from, say, I don't know, Legend of Grimrock or something. No, they spawn constantly. So already the cheapness factor is through the roof. Uh, I did not get that far into this game because I got to a point where it's like, okay, this is just pissing me off and it's not fun. Which is a shame because it's a pretty original concept, had an original storyline, even though it was pretty much setting up to be a prequel to the first movie. And just the idea of a Terminator dungeon crawler in a powered armor should have been like a slam dunk, or at least something good, but they fucked it up. Like, just the turrets alone are just kind of bullshit, because they will shred your armor so fucking fast, and the places you have to hit them are so specific. Yeah, between the turrets, as well as the spawning of the regular enemies, including the hunter killers, which those are a pain in the ass to shoot down. Yeah, this goes to the D tier at best, which is a shame again, because they actually released a CD version of this game, because originally it was a floppy that came with the expansion pack, as well as all the cutscenes redone with having full voice acting. It's just like, they put so much effort into this, or at least it felt like they did, and it just came out a bad game. Ugh. So yeah, we got off to a pretty good start with these games, because we've got two good ones and a bunch of slop. But the next two games are kind of more Terminator by proxy, because you actually don't play as any of the Terminator characters. You play as RoboCop in RoboCop versus the Terminator. I believe this is based off of a comic series. At least that's my guess, or what I've seen of it. This had two distinct versions between the SNES and the Genesis. And no, we don't say Mega Drive around here. This is not weeb shit. The SNES version was the worst of the two. My main problem with that is like the way enemies spawned, and because shit was cropped and zoomed in because of how big your character is, you have very little time to react. And they take multiple hits to take down because they're kind of spongy, which makes the levels a pain in the ass to get through. But this thing does have over the Genesis version is it does have an actual storyline told through comic panels, and it's actually not, for an SNES game, it's not bad, and they actually do look pretty nice. I will say visually the SNES one does look a little better in general, despite the fact that it's too damn zoomed in. And the boss fights are also less tedious in this game compared to the Genesis version. I'm going to say C tier for it, because the sound design is also kind of bland. It's just like, it's not really so much a bad game, it's just a really bland game. The only thing that just really sets it apart is just those comic book cutscenes, which, you can probably just look up and save the tedium. The Genesis version, on the other hand, is actually a fair bit of fun. It has better level design for the most part. There are some bullshit sections here and there. The soundtrack is considerably better. The sound design is a bit, well, if the SNES version is muddled, this one's just wonky. So pick your poison. It doesn't look as good, but it looked fairly decent for its time. The main thing about me is like the fact that if this one felt a bit more Contra-y, even if, because you play as RoboCop, you're still going to move slowly. But enemies, especially if you have the plasma, don't take an annoying amount of hits to take down. So if you got the plasma guns, like even the endoskeletons will just die in one shot. But the main thing that hurts this one is the lack of the story. It's got like a generic background with a scrolling for a beginning and the end. The rest of it, the story's gone. Which sucks, because again, the comic book scans in the SNES version actually do keep you invested to some degree. So you pretty much just have to rely on the gameplay being fun, or being enjoyable to you to enjoy this one. Like for this for the most part it is. The main hurdle for this one is some of the boss fights are bullshit. So they take way too long to die, especially the final boss. Holy shit. I don't even want to get started about how long it took to take that thing down, and I barely managed to do it. But, put that bullshit final boss aside, I think it's a solid B tier. which is kind of funny because, you know, it's a crossover game, and it's better than most of the games based off the individual films. Rampage. This is actually a sequel to the Dungeon Crawler. And while I guess you could see this in a similar light, this is not a dungeon crawler, but a Wolfenstein-like first-person shooter. And the reason I say Wolfenstein-like and not Doom-like is because this plays in a very strict raycasty. It has that very raycasty look, and you cannot look up or down. I mean, I guess you really couldn't in the original versions of Doom either, but you get what I'm saying. It had that more of a Wolfenstein look to it. Which, you know, you'd think, okay, that's an improvement, and it's probably fun, because we got the first Terminator FPS, right? Well, you're wrong. And the reason you're wrong is because the level design is atrocious. The levels are so fucking big and labyrinthian that you pretty much have to use a map. I mean, if you want to draw your own, you can, but you either have to be dedicated to this game or you be using a map while playing to find your way through them. That's how big each floor is. And the worst part is ammo and health are very stingy and located in specific places. So if you don't check the right rooms, you can go long periods without finding resources and you end up finding yourself just being fucked. And to top it off, there is, like, separate items you have to find in order to properly finish the game. And if you don't find those items, boy, you fucked up. Now, I believe you can go back and forth between the different floors. I don't know. I only played this once, and it's been a while. So if you miss it, you're not just screwed. But good luck finding those without a map. Because there is no rhyme or reason to the level design in this game. And the enemies... The regular robotic enemies aren't too much of a big deal, but the infiltrators, holy shit. They're not super hard to take down, but the problem is the game never makes it clear whether they're down for the count, because sometimes they'll get back up. And sometimes it could be a bit before they do so, so you think you're fine, turn around, and all of a sudden you're getting shot in the back. Which, okay, that's kind of cool like the first time, because it catches you off guard. You know, it's like, oh shit, that's a Terminator, they can do that. But again, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just happens. And it gets frustrating after a while, especially because, again, limited resources. F tier. Okay, it's better than those two, but it's just skip that one. Unless you just really got invested of the previous game's story and want to see the next phase of it. Just don't play that one. Future Shock. This was the second FPS, and this one was actually good. This was actually a bit ahead of its time as well, because the levels... It's not open world, but it was open map. It was kind of what you would expect from... If anybody's played Resistance, it's kind of like that. Though there's a lot less... No, it's a lot harder to tell where you're going, which is also a big problem with this game. It's also kind of buggy. But it was also made by Bethesda, so guess what? Yeah. There's also vehicle sections, which I think were maybe not the first, but pretty damn early. So yeah, this game was actually kind of ahead of its time, and the fact that it's a Terminator game doing that is actually pretty cool. But this one's pretty hard to go back to, I will say, because again, the level design is really tedious to get through. Because even if you find, like, the building you're supposed to go through in that wasteland, that repetitive wasteland, I might add, yeah, just getting to where you're supposed to be in said building can be a task in of itself, because, you know, key hunt, switch hunt. But that was to be expected from games of that time, but still, could have been better, but it's worth a playthrough. I'm going to say it's a B tier. Skynet was... The Skynet is a standalone game. It's a sequel to Future Shock, but I would say it's closer to an expansion pack, even if it is standalone, because it is shorter than Future Shock. But one thing it does do, despite its length, that helps is the levels they're still somewhat open, but they're more straightforward, so you're not getting lost in them. And the indoor environments aren't as a pain in the ass to navigate as well. It doesn't really have a whole lot beyond that. It's really just more of the same. Oh, and fun fact, like this applies to both Future Shock and Skynet. If anybody's played Resistance, much like in that game, you start with a crappy melee weapon, and then you quickly get a pistol, shotgun, and an assault rifle. And those guns are usable on the smaller enemies, but you can have a fun time killing the endos with them. Though they're not infallible to it like they are in Resistance. But Skynet is definitely the better of the two, as I said. One thing cool it does is if you got Future Shock, you can install Future Shock within Skynet, which will enable it to have played in a higher resolution, as well as some other enhancements. Though it does come with one major caveat. One of the levels is broken. And I mean that literally. Because something that was destroyable, that you have to destroy to finish the level, that was a solid object in the original version, gets turned into a sprite, and for some reason that sprite is indestructible. And as far as I can tell, that was never fixed. So you do have to cheat to be able to finish Future Shock within that. Now that being said, that object you destroy is right at the end of the level, and the exit door is like right behind the thing you destroy, so you're not missing anything if you do it. So if you don't mind having to cheat to finish that one level, it is the better way to play Future Shock. A tier for this one. Now we move on to the final game before we get to the Terminator 3 games, Dawn of Fate. This was kind of an interesting game. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but for me, it kind of felt like it was trying to be sort of a survival horror within the Terminator universe. And I actually jived with the gameplay a lot because it was that way. This one was also set up to be a prequel to the first movie, which, you know, Future Shock and Skynet were too. But this game's story is kind of interesting because it involves like people getting brain hacked and then turning into hybrids. But the problem is like that was never fully explored because the game ends on a cliffhanger. And I guess because it didn't sell well, they never made a sequel to it, which is unfortunate because I really enjoyed that game. I mean, I will say it's more of a guilty pleasure than being genuinely that good of a game, but it was fun for me. Visually, it did look dated. Cutscenes weren't that good. They did have a good soundtrack. I will say that. Overall, I would say it's a B tier. Not the best game ever, but it could be worse. It's not bad for the first 3D console game, I guess you could call it. Now I move on to the games based off of Terminator 3. The first one, Rise of the Machines. This game was clearly rushed to come out around the same time as the movie, and it shows. This game has two distinct styles to it. The main levels, which is a first-person shooter, and then the boss fights, which turns into a 2D arena fighting game, and I wish I was joking about that. Those fighting sections suck, I will say. But unless you're playing on like the highest difficulty, you can literally win by spamming the kick and win 9 out of 10 times. I'm not kidding. If you don't believe me, try it yourself. So if you hate those fighting sections like I do, just spam the kick and you'll get through it. The first third or so of the game takes place in the future war, and this is easily the best part of the game. Honestly, I wish the whole thing had been a prequel to Terminator 3, because the first third of the game does explain how the Terminator was taken over, and what he did to get sent to the past, which I thought was kind of cool, because, like, honestly, if this game had just been a lead-up to the movie, it would have been a lot better. Because the Future War levels aren't bad. They're not great, but they're not bad. They're not good, but they're not bad. They're okay. Like, honestly, this game would have been a solid okay game if not for the rest of the game, which, putting those fighting sequences aside, the modern-day levels mostly suck. Part of the reason is because there's several levels where you go up against cops and you're not allowed to kill them. Which I've seen some reviewers say that means you have to go around meleeing them. Which you can do, but that's not true. If you've got the shotgun, then you can just shoot them once in the leg and they'll go down and stay down, and that won't kill them. So that would be my tip to getting through those levels. But yeah, there's one level like after you get sent to the past where it switches back to the future war and you're fighting for the actual Skynet this time, which should have been a cool concept, but all it really does is just swap the two sides out. You know, the AI is basically the same, they die the same. So it's more just a uniform swap that was kind of underdeveloped. And then there's one more level later on, which like you go through the airport, and you're finally going up against like the early machines they show in the movie, so you don't have to deal with that can't shoot humans bullshit. That level's okay too. But again, the boss fights, the vehicle sections, and the fact that a lot of the movie levels are just either not levels, barely levels at all, or force you to not kill humans, just really drag the game down. And I'm gonna have to say it's a D tier, which is a shame because like, yeah, still better than those games. It's just a shame because again, the future levels are fun, but you know, not good enough fun to put it in the C tier, unfortunately. The Game Boy Advance version is different. This kind of has the opposite problem where the future levels are kind of blah, but the modern levels are just so much better because you can actually shoot the cops without having to deal with any bullshit because it just automatically wounds them and then they run off. So the movie levels are so much less painful to play through. And, you know, the boss fights are boss fights. They're not freaking 2D fighting sections. Gameplay-wise, this one actually plays like an isometric game. If anybody had played the GBA version of Tron 2.0 Killer App, it's a lot like that. Obviously the story is like very reduced, being the fact that it's a GBA game, but you know, if you've seen the movie, you've seen the story. And obviously the prequel sections in the future war are done better in the console game. So this game is like, this one isn't the situation of like the first third of the game's being pretty alright and the rest of it sucking. This one's more of just like two different sides of blah. Like, it's C tier. It's okay. It's just really mid. It's not terrible. It's not good. It's just mid. The next game is a PC game, War of the Machines, and this is a Battlefield clone. From what I could tell, it did not have any sort of single player. I don't know if it had bots. If anybody who played this might be able to correct me on that. But by the time I ever heard about this game, I'm sure the multiplayer had been dead, but given the fact that it didn't have a proper single player, and I was already a bit burned out on the Battlefield style of gameplay, it's just, I didn't care. So, yeah, you're going to have to look that one up yourself if you want any more information. The final game based off of 3 is Redemption. This one's mostly a good chunk of this game is a self-contained story, though it does have like sections from the movie. This game is like mostly this game is hard to describe. A lot of the game you're riding on a vehicle and kind of playing it like a shoot 'em up. If that makes any sense. Because you have to control both the vehicle and your weapons at the same time, but like, you're not driving it like you would, like, say, a Halo vehicle. Which makes the gameplay kind of tedious. And if the whole game had been like that, it would have been better, but the on-foot sections are just really drag it down. And on top of that, there are levels where you don't even get a weapon. All you can do is just drive and avoid shit. I stopped playing pretty late in the game. There's this one part where you control this giant tank. But the problem is like you have to kill a horde of endos that are approaching you. And those motherfuckers, they will swarm you. And if you don't kill enough of them, you just automatically fail the mission. I could not get past that. I tried so many different ways to try and kill as many of them as I could. And the game was just like, nah, fuck you. So I never finished it. I'm pretty sure I was pretty far into the game, but I just was not enjoying it enough for me to really care. Like, It is unique, a bit unique for a Terminator game, I'll give it that, but that doesn't make it good. I've heard some people claim it's like this is the one good Terminator 3 movie, and I disagree. I'd rather play Rise of the Machines. Now, Salvation. Salvation was a very mid movie. It was a good idea to have a movie set within the future war. The problem is that the story is a retcon version of that future war, number one, and number two, it takes place very early in the future war. So guess what? All the fun stuff you saw in the Terminator 1 and 2 with plasma and the hunter killers, you don't get that shit. Because most everything are just using regular guns. And that includes Skynet's stuff too. I will say I enjoyed the games better than the movie, but the console game has some problems. It's a very generic Gears of War-like third-person shooter, cover shooter. Main problem is like it doesn't do it particularly well. A lot of the time you have to go against the spider tanks, and those things can only be really shot in the back unless you have explosives. So a lot of times that means waiting for your teammates to bait them, run behind a different set of cover, and then shoot them in the back. That gets really repetitive after a while. Later on in the game, though, you do get to see the early infiltrator models, the plastic ones that they always talked about. I don't remember if they ever show that in the movie. I only saw it once and it's been too long. But it was kind of cool to say, oh, hey, it's the early infiltrators. But beyond that, yeah, it was just a pretty generic game. Like, it's okay. It's also pretty short. It's only like 3 hours long, which I don't think it had any multiplayer as well. I think it might have had co-op, but that's about it. So I can understand anybody who bought this. I don't know if this game came out at 50 or 60, but either way, bought this for full price. And then all they got was an okay, buggy, short third-person shooter that they're probably going to play once and never touch again. I only paid about $10-15 for it, so I wasn't particularly pissed off about it. It's C tier, I guess. It's okay. Just don't expect much. The arcade game, on the other hand, I did not know this existed until probably about 5 years ago, maybe. Because I went to a convention with a friend, and they had this in the arcade, and I got to play. I didn't get to play it, but I watched a bit of it, and it looked like a lot of fun. And then I forgot about it, and then probably about a year ago, when I did that Let's Play, I finally played it, and was like, wow, that was actually a lot of fun. I wish I could have played that in the arcade. Honestly, I would say that's better than T2, the arcade game. It doesn't have any bullshit escort missions, and it's just a lot of fun to play. Like, it's prime light gun. It's like, it's not Time Crisis, but like, you know, well, Time Crisis. It's not Time Crisis when it was peak. Better than Time Crisis 5. But yeah, solid A tier on that game. If you ever get an opportunity to play it in the arcade, I'd say take it. It is so much better than the console game. But after Salvation, because I'm pretty sure that game did not sell well, there's a pretty good lull in the series until about halfway through the previous generation when we got Terminator Resistance. This game, like, if you didn't have any if you didn't have any interest or knowledge of the Terminator and just played it because it was there, you'd probably find yourself, it's like, okay, that's a fun game. Maybe a 7 out of 10, maybe an 8. But for a Terminator fan, it is the biggest love letter you could ever want. They don't base it off of any individual movies, and it's actually set as a prequel to them, again, which is to be expected because it does take place entirely within the future war. But it takes those scenes from the first 2 Terminator movies and replicates it so well. Between the visuals, the atmosphere, the sound effects, the fact that the plasma looks and sounds like the plasma from the movies, the endos look like they do from the second Terminator movie. This is, I don't think we're ever gonna have a Terminator game that tops this. Like, in a vacuum, like, it's a good game. It's not the best thing ever, but as a Terminator game, it is perfection. The only gripe I have with this game is the fact that there's no New Game Plus. And the problem with that is because this does have RPG mechanics. You do level up and gain skills, and you also have to use chipsets to configure your plasma weaponry, which can take some time to do. And it'd be nice to be able to play the game without having to do that. But I don't really mind doing it too much. It didn't take that long. Like, again, that's more of a nitpick gripe. And I guess the other one is the sex scenes are just unnecessarily cringe, but they are completely optional, and the game does make it blatantly obvious when you do them. And if you want to do them, go ahead. If you don't, you can skip it. They don't really add anything. But other than that, it's just like, it looked good, it sounded good, it had done the atmosphere perfectly. And it had a nice difficulty curve to it because, again, you start with mostly ballistic weapons. And those work okay on the light robots, but, you know, they don't do shit against the Terminator endos. And definitely not going to do anything good against something like a 100 killer. So you pretty much, this does make the first few encounters with those endos turn into a stealth section, but they're not unfair. And if you do get seen and start getting shot at, you can run, so you're not just immediately fucked. And it doesn't take too long to finally get a plasma weapon, and once you do, you can start fighting back, but even, you know, once you start get that first plasma weapon, they're still pretty deadly. The only time where you really start, like, be able to go fully toe-to-toe with them is when you either get the sniper rifle or the upgraded plasma that you can steal off of them. But, you know, minor nitpicks aside, this is like the Terminator game to play. If you're a fan of the films at all, or even any of the games, and you haven't played that, I implore you to play it. It is that good. But again, if you're not a fan of the films, then you probably won't get as much enjoyment out of it. But honestly, even if you're not, it's still a decent first-person shooter. As you know, it's atmospheric. The levels, it's not open world, but the levels are fairly open-ended, and they're not too big, so you don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out where the fuck you're supposed to go, like Future Shock. But yeah, that's, in my opinion, best Terminator game. So the next two, the first one is Terminator Dark Fate Defiance. And before you immediately click off the video or write this game off, this game has barely anything to do with Dark Fate. About the only thing it does is the fact that you're fighting Legion instead of Skynet, which I don't know why they did that. I'm assuming that they probably got the rights to do it for cheaper than they have if they were going to do like a conventional one. This was, I believe, this game was made by Slytherin, but I believe they had the devs from that worked on Syrian Warfare work on this, which that had me skeptical because I did not like Syrian Warfare. It was a neat idea, but the problem is it was one of those kind of strategy games, those Eastern Bloc ones, where they feel like they're open and there's different ways to approach things, but really there's only like one or two, so it's more like a combat puzzle. And they block off the areas you're not supposed to go by either flooding them with mines or infinite reinforcements. So I got about maybe a third of the way into Syrian Warfare, and it's like, nope, this isn't fun. Dark Fate, on the other hand, does follow a similar approach, but it's a lot less bullshit about it, and mines really aren't that much of a factor. And the off-map reinforcements are more like scripted. So it doesn't feel like the game's trying to funnel you into going specific ways. I will say this is a very difficult game. So if you do pick this up and you're not used to real-time tactics games, especially not Eastern Bloc ones, you might want to play on easy mode. Because you do spend quite a lot of time having to manage resources, and even once you finish a battle, you're gonna be spending probably another 30 minutes to an hour scavenging equipment and vehicles off the enemy, because everything carries over from mission to mission. Like, there are some things you can buy from the shops, but money is about as limited as things like fuel. Oh yeah, you have to also manage your fuel as well. And the larger armor you have, the more fuel you take. Which I assume is to add more realism to it, but like, because of how the path is scripted, it just adds unnecessary tedium, in my opinion. But it does make you think about what units you want to keep and what vehicles you want to take. And the rest you can just sell. But the fact that it's a unique game does give it some merit, and it's just unfortunate that a lot of there's the game is a lot longer than it needed to be because of said tedium. But I think the game is like enjoyable if you're a hardcore tactics fan. But if you're not, there's always easy mode. And if you do pick this up, I highly recommend picking up the Legion DLC because the Legion DLC removes a lot of the resource management and just lets you concentrate on blowing shit up and destroying all humans. That doesn't mean you can play it like it's Command and Conquer, though, so don't try and do that. The final game, 2D Terminator 2D No Fate. Um, we finally have a game that isn't an arcade game based off of the second movie that's actually good. This is a this is a platformer arcade like, and when I say arcade like, I mean it's difficult, and it plays kind of like Contra. Its biggest problem with this game is the fact that it's short. I'm just gonna get that out of the way, and that's the thing a lot of people bitched about, myself included. It's only about an hour long, but it does have at least one playthrough because or one additional playthrough because while there are three paths, the first playthrough you're forced to take one path and then the other two open up. But the problem is like you don't get that option until like 2/3 of the way through the game. So like only the last third of the game is different. And even then, the other two paths are similar to each other. So if you played one, you played the other. The only real difference is the ending. Um, but yeah, you're after three playthroughs, you're probably going to be finished in 3 hours. There are other unlockable modes like boss rush and cheat codes and the harder difficulty. But yeah, this game needed to be short, be long, have more content, or be cheaper. Especially for people who want to play physical, because like I wanted a physical version, but they only sold it in collector's edition, which means I had to wait quite a while to find one for like within the $40 region. So I wanted a physical. Damn it. But yeah, it's a pretty fun arcade game. That arcade uh, action platformer, shoot 'em up, whatever you want to call it. This is what the original Terminator 2 on console should have been. If you like the film or just like those types of games, I highly recommend picking up. But wait for a sale. But if it had been longer, I'd say it's an S tier. But as it is, it's a solid A. Like it's definitely worth playing. But yeah, those are the Terminator games. Honestly, there's probably more crap and mediocre than there are actual good games, but the good games are good. And honestly, if you're a fan of the films, even the mediocre games can get some enjoyment out of. But yeah, that's my list of the Terminator games.